Booze, babes, and amps turned to 11. Now that's rock and roll. From the Stones to Sabbath, Motley Crue to Kiss, bands like these have not only lived rock and roll lifestyle, they've defined it. They're what every kid with a guitar dreams of becoming and every mother's worst nightmare. Today's topic, best sex, drugs, and rock and roll band. Welcome to a special episode of The List with Motley Crue and the Maximum Rock Tour. Here's how it works. Each of our guests has brought their top 3 picks. They'll defend those choices before our audience picks the top 3 best sex, drugs, and rock and roll bands. I'm Molly Culver, this is VH1, and you are on The List. Our first guest is the lead singer of Motley Crue, who is currently headlining the Maximum Rock Tour all across the country. Please welcome Vince Neil. Our next guest is also on the tour as the bass player for Motley Crue. Their latest album entitled New Tattoo. Welcome, Nikki Sixx. Joining us is the bass player from Megadeth, who is featured on the Maximum Rock Tour. A big hand for David Ellefson. And finally, rounding out the tour, here's the lead singer from Anthrax, whose most recent album is entitled The Return of the Killer A's. Give it up for John Bush. Now, before we get going, let's take a look at some of the band's best embodied good old sex, drugs, rock and roll tape.
I think a band's got to be real simple by doing illegal things, a lot of drinking, drugs, ladies, getting naked at concerts and things like that.
For me, the band that embodies sex, drugs, and rock and roll the most is Guns N' Roses, because Axl, Slash, and the rest of the band are always getting themselves into trouble.
A band that embodies sex, drugs, and rock and roll would have to be The Doors, because they did it all. To me, a band that embodies sex, drugs, and rock and roll has got to be Hole. I reckon Courtney Love's a bit of a psycho.
To me, Motley Crue is the biggest, sexiest bad boys ever. They rock. I love them.
Baddest band in rock and roll, the Sex Pistols. Craziest guys ever to walk the earth.
They have to be smooth, and they really have to hit the guitar hard.
Not bad. Okay, it's time to get our guest's choice, Vince. Let's start with you, okay?
Okay.
Come on, what's your third choice?
Well, you know, if you saw the movie, they made a movie about these guys, and like, there's a couple great scenes. One of these great scenes that I could relate to was when the singer was recording, was doing his vocals, and there was a girl in the booth with him doing something else, and. And it just like, to me, that was like, oh man, that is so cool.
Sounds familiar.
was that the Monkees? But my third choice, is The Doors.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay. I mean, look at this. I mean, he was just the embodiment of just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right?
And he's dead, right? I mean, that's the number one qualification. He's dead, right?
That's the only way you can be on this list.
Oh, but you never know. You never know if he's dead or not.
Ooh. He broke on through to the other side, dude.
Okay.
Let's go, Nikki, number 2.
My number 3 pick is, well, when I was a kid, we used to go through bootleg stores and find all these, at the time, vinyl. You know, it's kind of scary. And there was this album cover of this lead singer in silver pants and silver hair, and I had to have it. And it was Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And
Oh, yeah.
I got into that. And the lyrics.
He's whacked. He was always whacked, wasn't he?
Out of
Always.
his mind. I didn't realize how out of his mind he was. And actually, back to the Doors, if you read the Doors book, Iggy was a huge Doors fan and kind of followed Jim Morrison around, and the book actually embodies a lot of his lifestyle. And it was actually a big influence musically for me too. But that's Iggy and the Stooges, number 3.
Okay, Dave, let's hear your third choice.
Well, who wasn't of the Kiss generation? I know I was. So, yeah, right.
There's still a Kiss generation.
I still am, actually, yeah. I was just a wee young lad at age 13, and my mom took me to go see a Kiss show, and all these people were like smoking these funny-looking cigarettes, you know? And they turn around and they offer me some, and I go, oh my God, that's drugs, you know? Can't have that, you know?
Your mom took it.
So yeah, right. She was in another section, actually. Yeah, right on. So, you know, to me, it was like Kiss, they had it all going on. They knew how to rock. Every song was about getting laid. So you knew that part of it was in there.
They're mostly the sex part of the sex, drugs, rock and roll, aren't they?
Now the funny thing is about them is I remember when I saw them, they had these staircases that came down by the drums, and Gene and Paul came running down the stairs, and they're cranking into like Detroit Rock City or something. And I was wondering, like, where's Ace at? And about halfway through the song, he sort of like comes out in his space boots, and he's towering and weebling and wobbling, you know. And now, of course, we know years later the history, you know, of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of Kiss, you know. Yeah,
that wasn't an act.
No, that wasn't it, and that's why he didn't come down the steps, you know, because he probably couldn't come down the steps. So,
John, how about your third choice?
Well, my choice is a band that I feel are like the pioneers of the alternative movement that started in the early '90s, late '80s, and the lead singer Perry was definitely not somebody who said he didn't do drugs. As a matter of fact, he flaunted that quite loudly and proudly. So, and musically, I think they really had a big impact on changing a lot of the scene that was happening at the time. So my third pick is Jane's Addiction.
Yeah, all right.
And I remember they had that one picture on the cover of, I think it was Nothing Shocking, with the girls. Well, I think their boobs were covered up a little bit on the cover, but there were a couple pictures that I had around the house that they weren't covered up, and that was the sex aspect.
That was actually the first time I ever saw people really head diving into audiences, like at their concerts and things like that.
Yeah, they were
crazy.
They were good.
People were nuts there as well. Okay, Vince, up to your second choice.
Okay, second choice from the late '60s to the mid '70s. These guys are just. There's so many stories about these guys. There's one in particular that happened out of San Francisco, and it was, I remember this, the Mud Shark incident. You got to be old to remember this one. But
you're dating yourself, man.
I always do. I don't know why. But these guys, you know, it's Led Zeppelin. It's,
yeah, there you go.
Robert Plant. He got all the chicks.
He sure did.
He did.
As well, he should have.
You just looked at him and you knew that what was going on with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And throwing shapes, as we call it, you know, right?
And another dead guy, unfortunately, John Bonham.
So therefore, he qualifies on the drug aspect.
That's right.
There you go.
Well,
a lot of drugs going on.
All right, cool. Nikki.
Okay, it's funny because the generation now of people know this band, and they think of pop songs, and they think of kind of the polished videos and stuff, and they're a very cool band. But in their day, when they came out, they were in there with the Stooges, they were in there with Zeppelin, and it's Aerosmith.
They are insane.
Did those guys do a lot of drugs?
They never said anything about doing drugs.
Yeah, no, they never talked about it.
Yeah, right?
No.
What do you think about before and after all the drug stuff? I mean, they're clean now, so they do great music now.
It's a different animal. But, you know, just because they've been around so long, it's going to naturally be different anyway, you know, musically. So we'll never know if they would have stayed in that condition, what they would have sounded like now, or if they would have been straight all along.
Or like the way they evolved is just evolving. That's
it
just
might just evolve that way musically anyway. I think Steven Tyler's vocals are, you know, 100% better now.
Oh, absolutely.
Much better singer. But there was a certain rattiness about them as a young band that appealed to me.
That's cool. All right, we're going to number 2 for Dave.
When, I guess it was about the late 80s, there was a band that was notorious in Hollywood for taking forever to make their first debut record, got signed to Geffen, and I lived in Hollywood at the time and was starting to, you know, party a little heavier. And just your juvenile things that I started with, you know. And so these guys, I remember when their first song came out on the radio, I was driving down to like Lake Ellefson or something to do some jet skiing, and I wasn't feeling very well at the time, and their song Mr. Brownstone came on the radio.